Hey everybody, today I'm talking about Boonlake, which is a board game designed by Alexander Pfister and published by DLP Games. This one takes around 90 to 120 minutes to play and accommodates 1 to 4 players. So this is a pretty involved Euro strategy game, which you might expect from a designer like Alexander Pfister, who's known for making games such as a Great Western Trail, Maracaibo, a Cloud Age, Blackout Hong Kong, a lot of very successful games. And I would say probably weight-wise, at least in terms of its complexity, this is probably comparable to a game like Great Western Trail. But let's get on and show you how Boonlake plays. So the board in Boonlake is going to look like this, where you've basically got this map made up of all these hexes and divided into 4 separate towns. So you've got at the top here, you've got this unknown town, you've got Boonlake down here, then you've got Southern down here, and then you've got New Hope down here. And the idea of this game is that we're trying to basically develop these different regions by placing these tiles, kind of putting settlers there, develop them into houses and then into settlements, etc. Trying to get points in the process. At the bottom of the board here, you've got these different objective strips which you're trying to achieve throughout the game. So the game is fundamentally broken into 4 rounds, 2 of those rounds being intermittent ones, and then the kind of halfway point, and then the final point up here. And whenever your boat, which starts at the top of the lake here, crosses past one of these thresholds here, then you're going to go into a scoring and you're going to get points depending on the things you've done in your current board situation. But also when you pass those scoring points, you're going to have a look at one of these objectives here and try to see if you've achieved it or not. So in the first round, you want to be reaching this first point here, the second round here, here and here, but you can only ever score one of these tiles once. So you're going to be scoring them all, but at all different points in the game. Each player is also going to have their own personal player board that looks like this, and we have a bunch of these, again, these kind of people here. You've got your houses, you've got your settlements, and you've got your cows, and as you're placing these onto the board, you're kind of unlocking different bonuses and things you can get throughout the game, such as getting points when it comes to scoring, money, and all that good stuff. To the right of your board here, you've got these different lever areas, which will give you bonuses when you choose to use them, but you have to invest in doing them first. And when you do that, you're going to be putting one of these different things on it that look like this, and then when you want to use that particular ability, you can slide it down and take that benefit, and they'll refresh in the intermittent scoring phase. And this part up here on the board is basically your resource management area, and as you can see, all these different points here are related to a different resource. So you've got your wood, you've got your stone, etc. And depending on where your boats are, or your little kind of canoe things here, it's going to be showing which resources you currently have. So you don't actually collect resources in this game. You are kind of working out which resources you have based on where your boats are. So at the moment, say I had it like this, I've got 1 wood because I'm here, and I've got 2 of whatever this resource is because I've got 1 here and 1 for this additional symbol here. And as the game goes on, you can choose to kind of upgrade these and get maybe 2 of those and get all the different types of resources as well. You're going to have a bunch of tiles and cards that are going to come into play throughout the game, and you've got all your normal resources here, such as your money. You've got those lever doors, which I mentioned earlier, and you've got these vases as well, which are kind of a rare resource. Additionally, as you might expect for the Pfister game, this is very card driven. You're going to have cards that you can get in your hand and play throughout the game to not only get victory points, but to get ongoing engine building benefits. And the anatomy is going to look like this, where you've got your benefit of the card here, which can either be ongoing, it can be immediate, or it could be at the end of the game, based on these symbols here. And these are the resources you need to build that card: 3 money, 1 wood, and 2 whatever that resource is again. So if I did mention before, the idea of this game is to try and get as many victory points as you can. And the way you're going to do that is by taking actions based on this little board here, and with these action strips on these different areas. And the higher you up are on this little track here, means your boat is going to move up to more spaces. So you can see here, if I took this particular action strip, I'm related to 4 here, which means I can move up to 4 spaces down this this lake track and potentially land on these different bonus spots, getting me more cards, more money, these vases, new of these different settlers here, more resources, kind of opportunities, etc. So that's what you're trying to do in terms of going down the lake. And as I said, when you cross these points, then you're going to go to intermediate scoring. But also you can see here that all these different strips have different actions associated to them, and also have different kind of different seasons associated to them as well. So some of them are very simple, like this, which means that when you take this action, you're going to get money, you're going to get to play a card or draw 2 cards. But you can also see here on the right hand side of these strips that you might have these symbols that look like this, which means all the other players, and yourself included, will get to take a follow-up action, such as, again, drawing either playing a card or discarding a card for 2 coins. And this applies to all the different areas here as well. So you can see here, this one here says you can play one of these different field tiles that look like this onto the board. And then everybody else can either play a cow or play or discard a card. And that's basically how the game is going to work. You're just going to keep taking these strips, you're going to resolve the action, you're going to take that strip and move it to the bottom of the row, and then slide everything back up, meaning that if you want to take these actions again, you know, to kind of deter people from taking the same action, they're going to actually end up losing points. So you want to be waiting until it goes to the top to not only not suffer those penalties, but also being able to have more kind of flexibility on where you want to move down the lake. Now you can also see on the majority of these strips here, you've got this first symbol here, which relates to playing cards. And this is important because you can only ever play cards if you take the matching card types action strip. So you can see here that this card, this cattle supplies, is one of these daylight cards here, which means that I'd have to take one of these light blue strips in order to play it. Because again, whenever you take one of these strips, you have the option to either discard a card of the matching type for 2 coins, you know, if you don't want to play that card, or play that card, of course, paying the resources and then getting the benefits. And they let you do lots of cool things, such as climb down these tracks, which you can see in the top left-hand side of the board here. You've got this track here. When you go further down, you're taking more income when it comes to scoring phases, or drawing more cards when it comes to scoring phases. And you've got ones like this, where when you reach certain points on the lake, you get kind of money, or this one here, where you can discard cards to get more of your settlers, which are quite a difficult resource to manage. And this one here that lets you kind of move down the card track, or get points in lots of different ways at the end of the game. Managing those resources to play those cards is quite difficult in the first place, because you have this kind of river system where if you want a certain amount of resources, then you can obviously play them based on where your canoes are, and you can also move them down as you see fit. So, you know, if I needed 2 of these and 1 of these, then that's fine. But if I wanted to start going back to wood, then I actually have to start paying money to move my canoes back up the river. So this symbol here means that you get to play tiles from the stack here, and you're going to draw as many as the number there. And you're going to start placing these wherever you see fit, obviously connecting to existing regions. So if I wanted to play it here like this, then I would get those 2 coins that I'm covering up, and these will give more opportunities for people to build on. And you can do that as you see fit, again, crossing the bridges if you need to, and again, taking those bonuses. So very simple stuff. This one here means that you can either place one of your settlers onto one of these building spots, either taking the bonus on these earlier tiles, or even starting to pay money to get other bonuses in order to do that. But when you do that, you're going to put them on one of these spots here. Some of them have just 1 icon on them. Some of them have 2 building sites. And that's basically it. Claiming that tile for yourself. When you see this arrow going up, like this, it means you actually get to upgrade that particular wooden piece to another one. So for example, the settlers will upgrade to a house like this. And when you do that, you're going to have to discard another settler from your player board. So again, managing those settlers is quite difficult. Additionally, when you really want to, you can upgrade these houses into these settlements that look like this by discarding 2 of those settlers. But when you do that, you need to have at least I think it's 3 other what they call like I don't know what the terminology is, but 3 other pieces surrounding it, basically to show that that's built up. So because this has got a cow, another settler, and a house surrounding that settlement, then I'm actually allowed to do that. But if I didn't, I couldn't do that. And as you can see, whenever you're building anything from your playboard, you start to unlock income, like this, these 2 coins, and start to unlock points as well when it comes to those scoring phases. This symbol here means that you can play one of these field tiles, just as you would a normal tile, again placing it next to another tile existing on the board and getting the bonus. And then you can see here you've got this cow symbol, which you can choose to place cows onto the board. And based on how many cows are on that field is the resources you're going to pay for it. So if I had an empty field like this, it's going to be very simple. You're going to discard just one of these settlers, but the more cows you build on the same field, let's say I did this, you're going to have to keep discarding more and more of those settlers to make it more and more expensive. So that's very simple. These cows are a really good way of scoring because they end up scoring points each scoring phase depending on how many settlements they are next to. Additionally, when you build these cows and they're next to houses, then you actually get 2 coins for each house you're next to. And I'm only using 1 player piece here, but normally everything works for no matter whose player piece is on the board. So it's a very interactive game. This strip here basically means that you can choose to cover up one of these town bonuses and get it. So that one gets you 4 money, this one gets you 3 points, this one gets you cards, and this one gets you, where is it? This one gets you more money. And then basically every other region, because it's going to get covered up, every other region is going to score you, I think it's a coin for each of these different wooden pieces that are on the board of your colour. And that happens to all the other players as well. This one here can just let you upgrade or place new settlers on the board. This one here is where you choose to build these levers, and when you do that, you're going to basically pay the fee that's on the board here and put it on that matching spot. So let's say I covered up this one here by paying that 5. That means whenever I want, almost as a free action, I get to use that benefit from that particular lever. As I mentioned earlier, each time you take one of these action strips, you're going to start moving your boat down the lake here. And when you cross these points on the board, these kind of blue barriers, then you're going to go into a scoring, which is going to follow this little phase here, where you can play up to 2 cards or upgrade in any kind of combination of those. You're going to claim one of those objectives if you can, which are down here. Again, get cows down, how many levers you've got, and your kind of places on the track, trading in resources for additional points. And there's a whole ton of variation depending on the setup you want to choose. Then you're going to take your income based on the tracks here, again getting more money or even points as you go on, and of course the income from your individual player board here. And also you can see when you start building things and creating these strips, you can unlock more of these settlers and potentially start getting victory points depending on how low you get on your own resource board. After that, you're going to start getting victory points based on how many levers you haven't pulled. So again, the more you don't use those levers, you're going to start getting points, and then all the different regions are going to reset to be able to take that action again. Okay, so let's start by sharing my thoughts on some of the key concepts of the game. So let's start with the action strip mechanism. And I'm going to come out straight away and say this is absolutely fantastic. So very recently, I reviewed a game called Arc Nova, which is another pretty heavy, involved Euro strategy game. And I praise that game so much because it managed to almost engross a very involved, complex game, but into a very simple core kind of user interface and system to operate that game. This one does something very similar to that, where at the end of the day, all you're doing is taking one of these action strips and resolving it, and then pushing them back together. And when you do that, they're going to be obviously have an umbrella of actions that come under that, such as playing the cards and taking the follow-up actions, but all the actions in their own right are very simple. Place tiles down on the board and expand the towns. Either place or upgrade your settlers, draw cards, play cows, all that kind of simple stuff. Maybe even upgrade your player board. And I personally didn't ever find any confusion in what the symbology did, what the kind of fallout of these actions were. There really wasn't anything totally hidden in my opinion, and it was all pretty apparent on what you had to do and the best thing to do kind of at face value. So I thought that was really well implemented, and I love this idea of you're incentivized to wait for it to come back to the top, because then you've got more flexibility on where you can go down the lake, because you might want a cash injection, you might want more cards, you might want one of these vases, and more importantly you might want some of these resources to start playing more juicy cards in the first place. So yeah, I thought that was really well done, and I also like the tension here on the lake, which I didn't cover before, where some people might really want, say, a settler here, you're on that spot, but you can't actually share a spot with somebody else unless they're one of these wider ones here. So that again, that's got that kind of passive player interaction where you're blocking spots and covering up the lake positions on how far you want to go. And like most Pfister games, this one, or at least the more involved Pfister games, the pace of this game is dictated by the player. So with something like Great Western Trail, Maracaibo, they have very similar concepts where, again, you can kind of travel down this almost like a rondelle or a path. And when you reach certain points on that path, then things are going to trigger, you're going to trigger scoring, etc. And this one uses that same thing. And you've got to be very careful on how you use that, because you might want to jump forward and get a particular bonus, but you might not be ready for that scoring to activate yet. And I like the way that kind of embeds tension into the game, because you might think, my opponent's going slow down that lake, therefore I can afford to go slow as well, and maybe we're going to get more turns. But then all of a sudden, your opponent takes one of the top strips, and then they're going past that scoring when you weren't quite ready to do it, and you weren't quite ready to fulfill one of these objectives. Another concept of this game that I absolutely adore is the actual resource management system. So I can't actually recall any game using this before. Normally you just go to a spot or do something and actually collect physical resources and spend them when you want. This one is a very temporary thing, and you can only get resources based on your current position. And that's really cool, particularly when you want to take a certain action. You've also got kind of further restrictions on what you can play at any time anyway, and you might need to. I might need one of these and one of these, and that means I'm going to have to go down here and maybe go down here and get this card played. But then in order to play a future card, I might have to spend that money to move my boat right back up to the wood, which is going to be very expensive. So it kind of adds this kind of string of strategy into the game where you want to be playing these cards in a certain order to be more efficient and not waste money in order to move your boat back up, and maybe potentially get this unlock here so that you can flick that switch and move your boat right back to the start without paying anything at all. And on top of that, the cards themselves are really interesting and worth having, not only for the victory points, because obviously victory points is the aim of the game, but for what they actually do. So you can see things like this, when your levers, all your levers are going to be 2 cheaper throughout the game. So if you get that one played early, it's going to be fantastic. Or instantly refresh one of your levers to use it again and exploit that. So yeah, there's a lot to be had here, a lot to sink your teeth into, create really cool engines, and just a nice tableau of cards that's going to help you throughout the game. And on top of everything we covered, of course, you've got the actual current board state that you need to manage as well. And this is where all the interaction comes into the game in quite an interesting and dynamic way, because, of course, you want to create more coverage on the board because you want these really cool bonuses from under these hexes, which are all really worth having. But additionally, when you do something, you're kind of always creating opportunities for other players, because you might have really good tiles that you lay down that other people can build on first and get really cool bonuses, such as climbing tracks, getting money, getting cards, all that good stuff. But additionally, you want to be putting houses down because houses start generating you income. But when you put houses down, people might start by building fields and then putting cows on those fields because they're going to get money for doing so, and then building settlements because they're going to get points for the cows next to settlements. But you definitely want to get your settlements down, because settlements is going to be one of your main ways to generate points, and it might even be one of the objectives you're working towards. So again, whatever you do in this game, there's some kind of give and take. And I love the way that interacts with with each other. It's nothing blatant or in your face. It's just about kind of who's going to get the net gain out of this. And the game does a really good job of kind of enticing you to do things. So from a mechanical standpoint and from the actual decisions you get to make in the game, there's really not much I can criticise about this at all. I love the way everything works together in a very well-blended fashion. One of the big issues of the game, potential big issues of the game, is how long the game can take. So I said at the beginning this takes 90 to 120 minutes to play, and I think that's right if you're playing with 2 or 3 players who are pretty seasoned and don't really suffer from analysis paralysis or anything like that. I think if you're starting to reach that 4-player count, or maybe have 3 players who aren't used to playing games of this weight, then you are probably looking to that 2 to maybe 3 hour time frame, which is sometimes venturing into that kind of no-go area, which people just don't like to spend that much time playing one game, which is perfectly acceptable. But I definitely do think that once you've got your head around this pretty simple system and how everything works together, then I don't think it's alien to say that you could easily get this done in 2 hours every time you play it. Additionally, the game does a great job of keeping players engaged throughout the game, because when people take actions, you pretty much always get some kind of follow-up action, which will keep all the players engaged at all times and really mitigate that idea of just being sat out and twiddling your thumbs while other people take their turns. The replayability of Boonlake is also pretty excellent. I mean, you've got a ton of cards here that you can play with, and of course you're not going to go through all of those each game, so create new synergies, new combos, etc. And we've got a bunch of these different tiles that are going to be different each time that come out. You've got the actual different objectives as well, because you've got a whole bag here of different objectives you can play with. So again, that modularity and the variability of the game is going to feel fresh each time you play it. From a production standpoint, the game is wonderfully produced. All the components are high quality. All you've got your traditional wooden Euro pieces that look great, nice chunky, boats and stuff. The actual meeples look great. A lot of the pieces are kind of dual layered, so you've got this action strip board here where things aren't going to slide around, and the personal player boards are excellent. I love the way these work. Everything sits together in place brilliantly. Cardboard stock is all wonderful. I got no issues at all with iconography. I didn't even have to look once in the rulebook to see what anything does. It's all very obvious. And generally, it's a very pleasant looking game. You know, I like this nature theme or the nature visuals. But I would say there's a little bit of a disconnect with some of the card art and I suppose the theme in general. I mean, I'm not a theme man, but it just feels a bit weird that you've got this nice nature theme and then all of a sudden you've got these like metal buildings that just seem a bit out of place. And I think this is a bit of a wasted opportunity really, because for me, Pfister is really known for his gritty, cool themes. You know, you've got great games like Mombasa, even like Great Western Trail and Maracaibo. They've got edgy, cool themes about pirates and, you know, colonising Africa, all this really cool stuff. Then all of a sudden you've got this, which doesn't really mean anything. It just feels like it's a bit castrated compared to some of those other games, and I don't quite know why that is. Okay, so final thoughts on Boonlake. So if you can't tell by now, I think this game is fantastic. I will say that generally, Pfister games go one or two ways for me. Normally, I think they're either a bit too fiddly and a bit convoluted, or they're utterly brilliant. So games like Maracaibo, I think, is one of my favourite games of all time. And to be honest, I had a bit of apprehension to see, is he ever going to make a game as good as Maracaibo again? And I think he has here. This game is absolutely brilliant. It's almost like his rendition of a game like Terra Mystica, that weird level of player interaction and the upgrading your player board, unlocking things and scoring opportunities as you go. I absolutely love this style of thing, and this game does that fantastically. I love the opportunities that are created throughout the game and the way that the board develops and spreads out. It feels organic, but there's still some juicy interaction. You've got that classic Pfister hand management of, you know, are you going to, well, actually, what cards are you going to play and manage your resources to actually play those cards in the first place. And also which cards can you afford to discard and get money for, because money, again, is a tight resource in the game. This action strip mechanism does a brilliant job of making the rules manageable. And I will say, biggest props for this game in terms of not really being any exceptions to rules, any kind of need to go check the rule book and see anything like that. It's all very clear on what you have to do. And I think once you've learnt the rules here, you're not going to forget them anytime soon. I still like the familiarity of some of the Pfister traits here, like go down the lake, you know, as a timer throughout the game. That's brilliant. Again, the hand management and card play, constant engine building. It's pretty much got everything you'd like if you do enjoy Alexander Pfister games. And this one, for me, might not quite hit the heights of a game like Maracaibo, because not many games will forever. But this one, for me, I think is pretty strongly my second favourite game he's ever made. I think this is absolutely brilliant. A strong recommendation for me. Again, it's a shame that the theme was a bit bland, but the rest of it, the actual game mechanisms, the interaction, the kind of progression throughout the game, the satisfaction on building your little tableau, it's all there and it all is brilliantly fun. So yeah, I really do recommend Boonlake. Very excited that this game's come out. And I think it's fantastic. So this one is going to get my Elite Shield. I'm confident to give it that, because I think this game is going to be a staple of my collection for a long time to come.